Alright, in this video, uh, Chomsky versus Angsty quote-unquote socialists, I'm going to have to critique Chomsky just a little bit again. He seems to want to always assume that he is the holiest of the quote-unquote freedom fighters, and whether he's attacking postmodern feminism or postmodern Marxism or whatnot. In this case, I believe it was Spartacus group, I don't know, Spartacus group or whatnot. Someone had raised the question of why did you support John Kerry when basically he's just the left-center side of the corporatist party, which includes the Republicans and Democrats, and they did support, at the time, Iraq wars and everything else. Now, his response that small differences in a very powerful system can make a large difference for people is circumstantially accurate here. For that election, I would agree with him 100%. In that case, even I voted for John Kerry. But the bigger issue here is does this apply today? And today, his statement doesn't. Today there are even smaller differences, and I think I've watched videos of him say elsewhere about how Obama is a corporatist and things of that nature. Obama versus Romney is fits more in line with a statement he would later say in this clip, that elections are relatively insignificant, and I agree with him 100% there. They are completely insignificant. What we have is a fascist economic system, a one-party system with two different factions that have two different sets of corporatist backers. Both support the idea that the corporation is an individual and should be granted individual rights, despite the fact that that devalues actual individual rights. And really ruins democracy. But I find it interesting. Now, I can also understand that the person who questioned him was a bit aggressive, so I can understand an aggressive response from him. But he seems to contradict himself in this clip, because in the one chance he says small differences in a very powerful system could make a large difference, while not very far off later he states that elections are relatively insignificant. If elections are relatively insignificant, why not support someone, a third party or something? Because in all honesty, in my opinion, the only reason elections are insignificant, especially today, is because we don't have alternate options. We think that there's these two extreme sides, the left and the right, and the Democrats are the left and the Republicans are the right, and one's socialist and one's capitalist, but really not. Democrats aren't socialist and the Republicans aren't capitalists. They're both corporatists. So he seems to have contradicted himself there. So I don't really agree that he should have been so rough on the entirety of the Spartacus group, or whatever they were called. While I don't personally consider myself to be allied with them, I think it was completely unfair for him to say that or to imply that they did not care about the struggles of the world. Clearly, the simple fact that they came to this interview and asked such a question of such a iconic figure, knowing they would get a negative response from everyone around there because people tend to worship icons, shows that they cared. They probably felt somewhat backstabbed that he sided with Kerry. Now, granted, they shouldn't have made up all those lies about him. He's never been for those the Iraqi sanctions or any of that. That's 100% correct. So I understand his emotional response, but I think he let his emotional response overly affect his intellectual response, I think. And also to claim that he did more work against it than the person asking the question did. That was a bit. It just kind of shows that even Noam Chomsky, who apparently hates the ivory tower of at least the postmodern ivory tower of academia, still lives there. He's quite full of himself, but nevertheless, he was correct, especially in that election. I think the Kerry-Bush 2004 election was quite significant, actually, and it would have been a lot better if John Kerry had won. Now, granted, I think if John Edwards was the president and John Kerry was the vice president, they would have easily won, but hindsight's 20/20 and whatnot. But this whole idea, what really bothers me is it shows that even someone as quote-unquote radical as Noam Chomsky uses the idea that elections are relatively insignificant to continue to be moderated and drawn towards the mindless middle and be less radical. But at any rate, that's just my opinion on that.